Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. Oh no, maybe. Okay, we'll get started in 1 minute. No, I'll just do it. Okay, so we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we'll have our land acknowledgement. As we gather for this meeting, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We wish to acknowledge this land on which this SPC meeting is taking place. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Hohokam, the Akimel O'odham, and most recently, the Salt River Pima Indian community. Today, this meeting place is still home to many indigenous people from across Maricopa, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. Okay, so today we will be hearing from an amazing panel about the Student Code of Conduct, and I'll loop back to that because Dr. Menzel has somewhere very important to be. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with the Q&A, and the first question I'm going to ask you is, where do you need to be in a few minutes?
Thank you. So tonight is the coffee house at Saguaro High School, 6:30 to whenever it gets done. Tomorrow night and Friday night, you can also see the coffee house at Saguaro, Coronado, or Chaparral. So great opportunities to see students sharing their talents with the community.
Okay, so the first question is, can you speak to how the district is supporting middle school Mandarin immersion?
So the middle school Mandarin immersion, we've added at Desert Canyon Middle School. We hired staffing to provide that support. And Principal Akbari is working with the team at Desert Canyon Elementary School in order to be able to manage that transition to build out capacity in the school.
Okay, why do school buses not have seat belts? And this is from a third grader who wishes to remain anonymous.
So that's a really good question, and I'm not going to make up an answer. I do know that there have been conversations about seat belts on school buses. There are problems with that potentially in an emergency evacuation situation. And so I think the Federal Transportation Department has determined that school buses themselves are generally safe, and so the seat belts aren't required. There are some students individually who require seat belts, and that's provided. But if you had to seat belt everyone, one, it impacts capacity. More importantly, I think it impacts the ability to evacuate quickly in the case of an emergency, which when those seconds count, the seat belts could be a barrier to that.
Okay, this question is from an anonymous 8th grader. Do you have any plans to introduce a program similar to CGP for twice exceptional students?
So there have been conversations about twice exceptional students, and I'm going to turn to Dr. Williams to see if she'd like to talk about where we are in the conversations.
We have had lots of conversations about 2E students. The conversation becomes really individualized, however, because different students that are twice exceptional have different needs. And so just coming up with one comprehensive program that meets all the needs of twice exceptional students is a bit more challenging than we would have thought. And so we're trying to work with neurodiversity training for all of our gifted instructors as well as our special education instructors. So I'm working closely with the gifted department to determine how do we train teachers so that they understand neurodiversity as it pertains to all students and particularly our 2E students.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any updates on the Blue Zones project?
So Blue Zones, there's a lot of work being done around the 3 Ps, policy, people, and places. They've had a lot of work group conversations. Recommendations haven't been finalized yet, but there is a big community event that will take place on a Saturday in early January, and that will be an opportunity for some hands-on engagement with the work that's being done. The school district has had a number of employees who've engaged on the places and the policy conversation. There's interest on nutrition as one aspect and element of that. Our gardens are another area of interest and focus. And the third is alcohol and tobacco abuse and prevention efforts. So there have been a lot of different conversations, and I expect that we'll know more as we wrap up the calendar year and have the community launch in early January.
Okay, are district staff, administrators, and teachers required to respond to emails from parents? If so, in what time frame? And then what should parents do if they cannot get replies to email questions about their child's 504?
So in general, the expectation is that we respond to emails within 24 hours in terms of business hours. So if it comes in on a weekend, we wouldn't expect employees to respond over the weekend. But in general, some kind of response, even acknowledging receipt of the email and that it might take more time to get the information, is an expectation for us. I'm sure it's no one in this room, but sometimes you can have a ton of emails, and principals and administrators are dealing with a lot of different people, not just one. And so if there's a string of emails, they may economize in terms of the response, and you may not get an individual response to each one. But the topic or the question under consideration needs to be addressed by the person. If it's not addressed, and specifically with the 504, I would talk to the person supervisor to say, I've raised this question, I haven't gotten a response. Can you provide the support that I need in this particular situation? We always encourage people to try to resolve any issue or concern as close as possible to where the issue is. So if it's in the classroom, you work with the teacher. If you can't reach resolution with the teacher, then you move to the principal. If you can't with the principal, you go to the principal supervisor. What you don't recommend is that people immediately go to the governing board when they haven't followed those other line of command, because the governing board doesn't have special access to the information. The people closest to the situation know what happened and how best to resolve it. So our goal is to be timely, responsive, and if you don't get that, then follow the chain of command to the next person who's supervising the individual where you haven't gotten the response.
What is the Attendance Matters initiative? Does it look the same at elementary, middle, and high schools?
I don't see Margaret Cerna here, but Attendance Matters there are a lot of school districts that are working on Attendance Matters campaigns. This is our homegrown version of focusing on the importance of attendance and really tackling the question of chronic absenteeism. What we know in the data is that students who miss 10% or more of a school year, which is 18 days or more, really do perform much lower than those who attend regularly. And post-pandemic, we've seen an increase in Scottsdale and around the country in chronic absenteeism. So the Attendance Matter campaign is designed to help encourage and support regular attendance at school. There is a difference in the campaign between how the message is targeted for elementary, middle, and high school to be age appropriate and engaging, but the core message is the same, that attendance at school, regular attendance matters. You're establishing habits for life. How many employers let you, miss 10% of the work year without some, kind of consequence as a result of chronic absenteeism? The employers need you to be there. Those habits are good to establish. We also know that there are times where people are sick. They have a challenge and really shouldn't come to school. So it's about balancing those expectations, providing support when there are maybe barriers to good attendance, so that we're trying to understand what are the causes, and most importantly, let our students know that they're missed when they're not there, and we have a stronger learning community when everyone's attending on a regular basis.
Okay. Is there a policy governing how outside organizations are permitted to collect personal student information without parent permission?
So, yes, there's information called directory information, where parents, if they don't check a certain box, there are some organizations that can access information, but there are many that can't. Right? For commercial purposes, we don't just give away students' information, and I'm not sure in terms of solicitation of student information on a campus by an outside organization, unless it's voluntarily given, the school district shouldn't be promoting that. So I would need more on the specifics to understand what the concern is. But the district doesn't provide that information unless it's been authorized by the parents through our, the annual signing of those documents.
There is a reply or comment option on Parent Square emails. Should parents use email or Parent Square to communicate with teachers?
So I recommend using email. I think that's a communication mechanism that can be documented, tracked. It's easy to find where the email is or was in Parent Square because it's still a new app. If someone makes a comment, it does generally show up in your email, but I wouldn't want to rely on that yet. Just because email is known and predictable, I would just stay with that for any significant communication. If you have a comment related to a newsletter that a principal sent out, feel free to send the comment on Parent Square because it doesn't require an immediate response. And so I think if you're asking a question that you want a response, send it through email. If you're just making a comment and it doesn't matter if you get a response or not, then it's fine to respond in the Parent Square app.
Okay, that was all of our questions, and we're under 6:15.
Try to talk fast. Thank you all. Yes.
We learned that our school hasn't offered sex ed since before the pandemic, and there are no plans to bring it back. And questions about it are especially directed to not necessarily the government district. So, is there a formal process for getting sex ed back in our schools?
So the question was about sex ed and that we haven't offered it since the pandemic, and that's true. Our sex ed, or human growth and reproduction curriculum, hadn't been updated for a very long time. I was going to say since the 80s. That's probably not quite right, but a very long time. And so there is a process under state statute whereby the district can update the curriculum and make a decision. Under Arizona statute, that then is an opt-in process for any students and families that want to participate. So the first step in that journey is to begin the process of convening a committee. I believe that's a board-appointed committee. It'll be one that's subject to open meeting law so that people can participate and provide information as that unfolds. And after that is finalized and the governing board acts, then we could offer it again. But that's where we are in the process. We need to initiate a committee.
Okay, thank you so much.
I just have a quick question on tag along with that. Has a curriculum already been identified for that you guys, that's in review?
The former district curriculum hadn't been updated for a long time. So what we believe in reviewing it is that it's so antiquated that probably we need to go through a formal process to look at what makes the most sense for our students, age appropriate and compliant with Arizona statutes. So I think we'd start fresh that way. Not that we wouldn't look at what's there, but there hasn't been a curriculum identified. Well, there are, I'm going from memory, I don't know, Nick, if you remember, there are at least 2 public hearings that have to take place, plus the committee has to have, time to be able to review what the options are. One of the things that we like to do is talk to our neighbors to find out what they're doing, to see if something's working well or if something's not working well. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel if we've got some neighboring districts that have found a path forward that works for them. But, I would say, if you moved really fast, you've got at least a couple of months, but you could probably do it in a quarter, 3 months, and get to a point of a recommendation. Yes? So administratively, we've talked about it. We haven't brought a recommendation to the governing board yet. So there have been a lot of things that are on our plate as we've gone into this school year, and so we have to pace the things that we tackle. Right now, the curriculum team has been working on the K-5 ELA adoption, which is not a small task, and so we need to be able to stage the curriculum adoption process, and so that could be considered after the K-5 ELA adoption is finalized. So the first reading of that will be next Tuesday, the 24th, at the study session. All right, now I have to run.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump back to our agenda. So we just had our Q&A. Our panel is on the Student Code of Conduct. After we hear from our panel, who I'll introduce on a future slide, we'll have some updates from the executive board, and then we'll end with some updates from our schools. Okay, so we are going to have a panel discussion about the Student Code of Conduct. We have with us tonight Dr. Melissa Sakos, who's Assistant Superintendent, Amy Hardy, who is the Assistant Principal at Chaparral, Adam Luke, who's the Mountainside Principal, Dr. Brooke Williams, who's Director of Special Education, and is also on this panel for her expertise in elementary. She's been a principal of elementary school, Laguna, right? Okay. And then we have, oh, I didn't ask. Buzon, Nick Buzon, our new general counsel for the district. Okay, so we prepared some questions in advance, and after we've gone through these questions, if you in the audience have questions, you can write them on a card. There are cards over there on a table, and they're also scattered around a little bit. And so if we have time at the end, we'll take questions from the audience. Okay, and just so you guys know, this is being recorded and live stream, but they can't hear us without the microphone. So we're gonna play microphone tag because there's only one that works in the room. All right, so the first question is, who determines discipline?
I'll take the first one. Thank you for allowing us to be here this evening. Ultimately, the school administrators, the site administrators, so assistant principals and principals, are the ones that determine discipline in accordance and in alignment with the code of conduct. So the code of conduct aligns with our state and our federal laws, and is updated on a yearly basis. Within the code of conduct, there are rubrics that lay out elementary, middle school, and high school, and minimum and max as a guiding, to help with guidance for our administrators, so that we are somewhat consistent across all of our schools. What's important to note is that there are special provisions in place for students with disabilities, whether they have a 504 plan or an IEP under IDEA. And once the school reaches a certain threshold consecutively or cumulatively on out-of-school suspensions, then there's considerations made, and the school team has to determine whether or not that behavior is manifested by that disability. And there's a different process for that. Did you want to add anything?
Sure. Adam Luke, principal at Mountainside. Thanks for having me and all of us. I think the easiest thing to remember is if you follow the code of conduct, you are essentially treating every student fairly and equal. Like Dr. Sacco said, you've got the min and the max for the offense, so you can utilize that, but you're using that matrix, and then you actually show the student the consequence to their action, and you explain it to them. It's the explanation and how you treat the student. They made a mistake. Okay, great. We make mistakes. We learn from them, we move on. Then I say, when you're back on campus, depending on what the penalty is, they'll have a conference with me, and then we talk about what we're gonna do not to make that mistake again. So, yeah.
Great job.
Okay.
Okay, what should parents do if they disagree with discipline for their students?
Okay, hi, I'm Amy Hardy, the Assistant Principal of Educational Services at Chaparral. I've worked at elementary and high school level, so when parents disagree with a consequence of suspension, anything that's less than 10 days is technically not appealable, but we do hear parents out. We like to listen to maybe, kids get home and there's always more to the story. And so if we can find a way to, sometimes I'll look at, okay, they have 5 days out of school. We're gonna do 3 out and 2 in school for the 2 days so that they can make up a few tests or concerns that parents have. We always try and rule in favor of what's best for the student. Sometimes when there's significant fights or physical injuries, it's good for the students to be away and take a break so that the drama can simmer down. So that would be just for the out-of-school suspensions. Most often, assistant principals involved with addressing office discipline referrals. It's usually always us. We are a team, especially at the high schools. We try and run it by 1 or 2 people. Hey, here's what happened. Here's what I'm thinking. Is this consistent with what you've had? And a lot of times the other principals will chime in. Yep, I had that yesterday. It's the exact same consequence or the same suspension. And then if let's say that we can't get to an understanding at the site level, then a parent's option would be to reach out to Assistant Superintendent of Secondary, which is right next to me. Or for elementary, that would be Margaret Cerna, who is the elementary executive director. And then again, our goal is to ensure due process is followed and that our discipline, again, is going by the code of conduct. That's it. I can talk about expulsions, though, if you need. The last part is probably the most egregious, which we rarely see. But if there is a situation where a kid is up for expulsion, the process is very lengthy and it's very detailed in the code of conduct. And we do bring in a hearing officer that will hear the school side, that will hear the parent side, and make an impartial decision and make a recommendation on the student's behalf. And that must be approved by the governing board once that happens.
How is the dress code defined and how is it enforced at each school? And are dress codes the same at each school?
Okay, working at a high school, we deal with the dress code quite a bit. And I will say winter helps a lot with dress code at the high school. And it's outlined again, and this was taken directly from the code of conduct. You can see very clearly the biggest thing is that clothing has to cover private body parts. And that is what we see most commonly is short shorts and spaghetti straps. And the way that we handle this on every campus really is, hey, do you have something to cover? Do you have something, can you flip your shirt inside out? I will say, even in talking with other principals, we try and pull the student aside and wait for a time that they're not in front of people or that we can catch them, not calling them up to the office to say, what are you wearing? We'll find a time that we can speak to the student privately and say, hey, can you flip your shirt inside out? And I will share again, the most common things we see in high school level are body parts showing and then drug and alcohol t-shirts. I see a ton of those and they're very easy to manage. We just, hey, flip that inside out, or hey, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I didn't have another shirt this morning. Okay, well, I'm gonna ask you to flip it inside out and please don't wear it again. Then most of the time I'll keep track of the student, I'll take a picture of their ID or something just to remember, but I will say it's very rare that it happens again. It's usually a one-time thing.
And with dress code, I mean, it's a tricky subject. It's you have to understand that when you do dress code a student, it's mortifying for them. So even though they know the consequence, even though they probably know that belly shirt is going to get them dress coded or the Budweiser slogan, it's still, when you call them out in front of their peers, it can make the situation get even bigger. And so it's how you handle it. Again, you treat them with respect. You wait until they're alone. You kind of have them come over here, and then you explain to them why you're doing it. And they don't always have to agree, but you give them the option, right? Okay, let's go flip it out or flip it around, or go to the nurses and quick change into a school spirit. Who doesn't love Mountainside? Like, let's go, Cougars. And it's your delivery. Because if they feel respected even though they've done something wrong, your relationship's gonna grow. And so that next day, you might get an apology, or as Amy said, they just won't do it again. So they've heard you. So, yeah.
We don't get this as much at the elementary level. Parents are typically dressing their kids. And so we get it a lot less often, but when we have something that's like this, it's the same thing. We usually, just pull the student aside, have a conversation with them. Usually we just take them down to the nurse's office and the nurse finds them something fun to wear. And so we try to make it not as big of a deal, and then we typically would call the parent and just let them know, hey, this is what they were wearing, this is why we had them change. And have that conversation. A lot of times that conversation is happening with the parent at the elementary level versus the student, because again, the parent is typically the one purchasing the outfit or maybe nobody saw them this morning, or maybe grandma and grandpa were there and didn't know which clothes were the right ones to put on. Maybe they put on last season's clothes instead of this season. So it's typically just that conversation with the parent versus the student at the elementary level. Come in with a different. Yep.
Is it like repeated violations, or how is it determined whether to contact a parent for a dress code violation?
So it might not be instantaneously that we call them right away, but like at the end of the day, or when they have to pick up the shirt, depending on what the offense is. Sometimes it's very minuscule, or they never even pick up the shirt. But yes, the parent will get the call. I can't speak for every campus, but we let them know that this is what was going on campus today, and if we could we just make sure? I let the parents know. Let's call it a weekend shirt, and then they're like, okay, I got it. Like Saturday, but they always wear it. Well, let's wear it on Saturday and Sunday, and then they're like, okay. So you don't usually get too much pushback because a lot of the times they don't know that their child left with that shirt or short. Yes. Yeah. So we're just hoping for a really cold El Nino this year. I can't speak on high school. I know when I was at Chaparral, depending on how much pushback we got because of the asking of the dress code, then that might have resulted in a parent phone call, but not every dress code. I don't.
Correct. Yes. And to talk about high school a little bit more, one thing that works really well, they all have phones, and most of the time, if this is a common time, it's lunch, it's a passing period, I'll have them text their parent and show me that the text went through, and then I trust them, and the one thing that I always remember when the first incident with discipline is that we want to always give the student the opportunity to make the change. And if they can show me that they are going to take responsibility for what happened and change it, then I usually let it slide. I go, okay, this is your opportunity. If I see it again, then I'm going to have to call home. We're going to have to figure this out. If you are changing in the car, mom probably needs to know about that.
So I don't know if it's really a question, more as a comment. So I'm a staff member and a parent, so of elementary kids, but I work at a middle school. And I've just been a little bit baffled about the leniency with the dress code this year as it's been rewritten and I think a lot of my colleagues were as well. So, and I'm going to be really frank, the amount of boobs, butt, and belly we see on a daily basis on a middle school campus is very concerning. And I'm a mother of young girls, and they're at a K-8, so that's concerning what they might be seeing when they're going to school. And but I think what happens from a staff perspective is you see these things, but even as a female, dress coding a female student, it is uncomfortable and awkward. And so we have a lot of male staff at our site, and they are especially uncomfortable, so they'll get their female teammate maybe, but even as a woman, I don't feel comfortable going up to a girl, and I do it very graciously as you described, but it's uncomfortable. And but I feel like the message to the students has been, there is really no dress code. Spaghetti straps are now allowed, so we're seeing bra straps. We're seeing very low-cut things. We're seeing the oversized shirts that are long, but covering the shorts that I don't even think are shorts. I mean, I dress coded a girl for wearing men's boxer briefs the other day. I mean, so it's just, I don't really have a question. It's just putting a concern out there from both a parent and staff that it's bizarre to me what we're allowing students to wear.
Who set the dress code?
Oh, that's tight. Yeah, I asked, who creates the dress code?
So each year, there's a code of conduct committee that meets, that it comprises of district, site, administrators. Students have most recently, through the Student Advisory Board, given feedback on the dress code that meet and look at the dress code and come up with what students must wear, what they may wear, what they cannot wear, and so it's outlined in the code. So overseeing middle school principals and high school principals and K-8 schools, I'm happy to take this feedback back to them. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow and share this, your concern and perspective on the matter. And with the Code of Conduct Committee coming up.
So I should have put this question last because I'm pretty sure you could write a dissertation on dress code, but I'm going to move on because there are some other, I think, topics that'll be interesting as well. Okay, so the next question I'd like to get you guys to weigh in on is, how are repeated disruptions handled in the classrooms? And I'd like to answer this hear an answer in 3 phases, right? So elementary, middle school, and high school. So how do you handle repeated disruptions in the classroom?
So at the elementary level, repeated disruptions, I mean, it kind of depends, right? That's always the answer. But what we typically see are kids that are getting upset, either yelling or having an external reaction to something that's happening. At the elementary level, typically the first line of defense is always the teacher. The teacher tries to kind of handle that in their classroom. That's their tier 1 instruction. They might have an area in the classroom where the student can go and refocus, look at some of the expectations of the classroom, those types of things. They might have a private conversation with the student. They might have the student take a break. After that, they might then call for administration. Administration then would go in and help support. If we see that, we have kids that we see that have these rather frequently. Typically, we come up with some sort of tiered intervention plan. So looking at our multi-tiered systems of support, the first thing we'd look at is what are some of the expectations that we have for the student. If the student's not responding to that, what are some other things we can do? Do they need to have a check-in with a trusted adult in the morning before they go to school, before they go to class and after? Do they need to have breaks set into their day so that they have an opportunity to leave the classroom, refocus, and go back in? So we come up with these more tailored plans for kids, the more disruptions that we see. So as those things go up, our interventions for those students continue to go up.
I really kind of mirror everything Dr. Williams said. Sticking with sewing analogies, one size doesn't fit all. So getting to know the student, getting to know the issue, speaking with the teacher, speaking with the parent, depending if it's the teacher coming to you and asking, I need some help with the disruption, or it's a parent that reaches out to you and says, there's a kid disrupting this class, do something about it. And so it's always trying to get the whole story, the whole picture, and then figuring out what intervention needs to be applied to that student. Sometimes it is as simple as a check-in, check-out. I've had kids come in for 2-3 days in a row during that hour to work quietly in my office while I'm working on emails. And then as we're doing that, we talk with each other. We create that bond. We start to talk about what got them here. What are we going to do to keep you back in the class? So I wish there was like a very simple answer, but it's really taking the time to sometimes work with your social worker, work with your SRO, work with your counselors, your assistant principals, and then really teaming with the parent in figuring out interventions that they can apply not only weekend at school, but also at home. So it's definitely a united front.
Okay, so to talk about repeated disruptions in high school classrooms, so I will say we have the same supports in place, the multi-tiered systems of support. And one thing that we worked really hard on this year was that whatever behavior we're paying attention to, we're going to get more of. So if we're saying stop that, don't do that, well, that is what is going to get attention in the classroom. If we are, thank you so much for being in your seat, thank you so much, those are those positive reinforcements that are very important tier 1 procedures that we go over extensively in the beginning of the year with our staff. And then as far as, if a kid needs additional support, if they are continuing, well, the most things that we see in high school are defiance and disrespect. Like, I just want to put my AirPods in, I want to look at my phone, and I don't want to listen to what you're trying to ask me to do. They're teenagers. That's what they do. And so we do have some minor infractions that we clearly define this year. So if a student is repeatedly not responding to your positive reinforcement and also a direct warning of, hey, I am asking you to take your AirPods out so we can focus on class today, then it's a contact home, and we do have a Pride Patrol where the students are serving kind of like a lunch detention. They check in with an administrator at lunch. They're helping us clean up campus. They're sitting in a quiet space so we can talk about it. That has helped a lot this year. We also have a detention after school that we will have them stay after. I've had some seniors like, hey, you know, you're not showing up for first period, and we've talked about it. This is a really important class. You're going to have to stay past your early release and work on that class. So we try and make it fit with what the student is needing extra support with. And then for the tier 3, which would be, you know, we just can't get anywhere with the student, we do pull in resources for that. We have a social worker that's there full time. We're very fortunate to have that. And we have a lot of support that we will, you know, put together some specific plans with district support as well for students. That's it.
Beyond tier 3, would there ever be an instance where you remove the child permanently from that classroom?
So removing, I mean, we can, at an elementary level, we don't typically have that happen, but removing a student from a classroom permanently, if you're talking maybe like a classroom change, that might happen sometimes. So sometimes the learning environment for that student might not be the right one. We may look at, you know, is there a different teacher or a different group of students in a different classroom that might be a better fit. So that can happen according to that plan with those, again, that parent of the student that's having challenges. A permanent removal from school would be, you'd be looking at that expulsion type thing, which isn't really something we'd be looking at, but oftentimes there are plans that we can put into place and maybe try other classrooms that might be a better fit.
You know, just thinking about that too, there has been, you know, countless situations in high school. I'm like, they are just not getting along. I mean, this is just not the right setting for the student. I have no problem. You know, hey, there's another class that fits with your schedule that's still going to meet your academic needs. Let's just move him or her so that they can still get what they need. But sometimes it's just not being afraid to make the switch or the change to put that student in a different environment that's going to work better for them.
So this is sort of the same question, but from the perspective of a child who is not doing the disruption. So if your child is in a class that is experiencing repeated disruptions, what can you, like, what as a parent can you do? And I guess this would assume that, like, you've reached the teacher and it's still continuing.
What'd you say? Yeah, I mean, that happens, right? I mean, a student wants to come to class, they want to learn, and we've got someone behind them that's just not allowing them to. And like you had said, the parent has already talked with the teacher and they're still not satisfied. So that's kind of when you bring everyone together. I'm a huge fan of restorative practices. The I statement has worked wonders at Mountainside, where you get the kids in a circle at a table and you use the I statements, and nothing is off the table in terms of you can't say that someone's wrong or right, because that is how I feel. And so when those students say, I feel this way, okay, great. Then you go around the table and everyone sort of hears the different perspective, and depending on what the discipline is, but when it is between two students, then I'll have myself and a counselor sit in, and they really get to understand why the other is frustrated with the other person. And then why does the other student decide to act out in the class? And that can be applied for numerous discipline, numerous incidents. And we've just found a lot of success when the kids speak up and actually say it out loud to the other child. It kind of resonates with them. So we've had a lot of success with that.
And I will echo, from what I was talking about earlier with students that might not be getting along in the class. If there's another student who is bothered significantly by what's going on, same situation. Hey, let's see if we can get you into a different class. Let's look at an online class. We are a little bit more fortunate at the high school that there's multiple options for students to take their course rather than just being in that same class. So I try and look at the bigger picture for that student, and if it's really important and it's going to make their life better, then we're going to make it happen. We're going to figure it out.
Okay, what should students or parents do if their child encounters bullying? And so I think this is not like they are being bullied, maybe they see it, or both, actually. They're being bullied or they see it.
They should immediately report it to a teacher or an administrator on the campus. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but in 99.9% of the time, the administrator's not going to say, Amy came and told me that. You did this. Remember Amy? She's the blonde in your first period class. She's the one that's calling you out. And so 99% of the time, at least in my experience as a former high school administrator, they don't really know who's reporting it. So if Amy come and tells me something and I need to speak to Brooke, I'm saying, Brooke, I've heard some information, in the lunchroom where that this has been occurring, or I was able to see you at this point in time, and so then dealing with the student and then gathering the statements. So it's just, and I know a lot of our students, because I get this a lot with parents as well, is I don't want my students speaking up. I don't want them to be a witness. They are a bystander, but I don't want them to speak up because I'm afraid that they'll be retaliated against. So the old, adage, okay, Melissa, there we go, snitches get stitches. Thank you. Sorry. So there's still that feeling a lot with students and with parents. And I now, my girls I have a freshman in college and a sophomore in college, and I heard this all when they were in middle school and high school as well, especially with me working for the school districts. It's like, you better not say anything because I don't want so-and-so, I won't be invited to the Girl Scout dance if you say anything. So it's really hard, I know, for students to come forward, but we're really trying to encourage them that, yes, tell a trusted adult that's immediately there, and so the teacher can get to the administration or they can go straight to administration. For the younger ones, I think they're typically used to telling a teacher, and for the older ones, they oftentimes just go straight to administration.
I will agree that is the most common thing that I hear is like, I'm terrified. I don't want somebody to find out. I don't want so-and-so to know that I said this. And so a lot of times we'll do a safety plan with that student. Like, okay, here's 3 things that we're putting in place for you to make sure that you, if anything happens or if anybody says anything, here's what you're gonna do. So that student feels safe and comfortable, leaving reporting that information to help us. My own kids go to Desert Canyon Elementary, like huge shout out there because they know, I ask them, well, what happens if somebody's being mean on the playground? We use our stop sign. And I go, do you step in and you tell them to stop? Yeah, and then what happens if they don't? We go tell an adult. So there seems to be some great processes in place at elementary too.
And I feel like a broken record with stating it's all about the relationship and the rapport you built with the students. But when they know that you are a trusted source, they easily come down because they know that we have their best interest in mind. And our counselors at Mountainside are, bar none, the best because they have phenomenal relationships. And our new AP as well. The relationship building that has happened on campus is amazing. And so these kids come down and they're coming down and they're engaging and interacting with us on such a regular basis between passing periods and at lunch that it doesn't look weird that they're even coming down to talk. So there's no, like antennas up and being like, why did they come down? Why'd they come down? So, and you just reassure them that I'm not going to tell anyone. So if you don't, I think we're going to be okay. But if something gets out, let us know and we'll handle it. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I can talk loud. I don't need the thing. What happens after they report something to you? Is there a follow-up process? 'Cause I feel like a lot of times I hear, I said something and nothing ever happened. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case, right? But so what is the process for making sure they know something happened?
So unfortunately, due to FERPA, we can't share what happens. And so a lot of the times, what perception is reality, I get it. And so the perception is nothing happened. But then, our hands are tied in terms of, well, we can't come back and say, well, this is what we gave and this is what we found. So yeah, that's, it's, I guess some of the things that the kids see is when the absence of the student on campus, because the kids talk, things like that. But we unfortunately can't share that information.
Thank you.
Yes.
You tell the students that are telling you something, you tell them that you cannot let them know because of FERPA, what you do and if you do something and what happens, because that is important that they know that you heard them, but you cannot tell them. So, because I have 3 kids, 2 are out, 1 is a senior at Arcadia, and what I heard the whole time is, well, it doesn't matter, we don't say anything because nothing changes, and on all kinds of levels. So I think it would be important to tell students maybe at the beginning of the school year when you do the talk anyway, and don't be surprised if we cannot tell you because of that.
That's a great idea. We always say thank you. Thanks for the information. We will handle this. Let us know if you have any other questions. But we appreciate that you let us know. But that's a great idea for the beginning of school assemblies.
Another comment, I really like how you are dealing with your students, how you work with your students, the campus climate that is happening at your school. And that's more like a comment. I don't think that's happening on all the schools, especially high schools. So I think that would be great to really look into that kind of campus climate gets established.
So that's leading right into a follow-up I had. What can students or parents do if they don't? Oh, what? Oh, what can parents or students do if they don't feel comfortable talking to an administrator or someone at their school? Like, where do they go? Is there like another option if they don't have a principal like you that is fostering great relationships?
Is the student maybe expressing this to a parent, or is it, I guess, if sometimes students are afraid to say something to me, I will ask them, who's somebody that you trust on campus that you can talk to? And they have to identify an adult that they trust. That's usually a teacher, an English teacher, a math teacher, or somebody that they know really well. And then we'll have that person come up and talk to the student or get the report from them.
Has that been communicated back to the parents? And I don't have kids in high school or middle school yet, but just out of curiosity, like if there's a student that comes to you and shares something with you about another student or something that's disruptive to them or an issue, is that something that then the administration would go back and communicate to the parents?
To the parents of the student that reported it? That's a good question. It depends on what they're reporting. And it depends also, a lot of times it'll be so-and-so was like posting this on Snapchat and they were doing this. So then I got to go into that investigation. So a lot of times I will set up a plan with that student. And you're right though, will reach out to the parent, say, hey, this student came to me, but here's the plan. If anything is said, here's where they need to go to report, but they are safe reporting this information. We will handle it using the code of conduct. Yeah. Those are great perspectives.
As a student, I can see how with friends relationships, when you stand up, just even if they're your friend, because I've encountered this, having to say something, even though that's your best friend that you've known ever since kindergarten. God, that must be hard. But still, for some students, it's hard. Like it's hard for them to go ahead speak up to an adult that, especially for a new student, it's hard. They don't know them. They don't know who they trust. But with teachers saying, we trust you. They trust you as a student, and they see that they can speak up even though something might happen between them for like a month or two. Yes, might cause some ties in that relationship, which might be hard for a lot of students, especially for me, because I can see I have friends. Sometimes they're bullying others, even me. Just saying something could hurt. And I gotta go up, but it is hard because you can lose a best friend, which some students won't stand up because they don't want to lose anybody.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question is, what is the strategy for handling vaping in middle and high school bathrooms?
Well, you should probably start.
I can start. As I said earlier, I had the pleasure of working at Shaptown as an assistant principal, so I dealt with high school and vaping quite frequently. On the middle school campus, very few incidents, but it is extremely important to follow that code of conduct, because when you follow that matrix, you cannot make a mistake. When you have a parent coming in and they're embarrassed, they are embarrassed. So they could show a range of emotions. You could get a parent that extremely agrees with you and you only gave them 3 days, give them 6, or you can get the ones that completely have no idea why you're suspending them. And it comes down to student safety. Everything comes down to student safety. The whole code of conduct is designed to keep kids safe. And so once you walk through, you might show the video footage walking into the bathroom. You show them their student's statement. You talk about what you spoke with them about, and you walk them through step by step on your process and why and how you got there. And 9.9 out of 10 times, they leave not always happy, but they understand. And so I also say, if you have any questions, call me, text me, email me. I'm here. Because sometimes when you go home, you're gonna start asking more questions, you're gonna need some further confirmation or explanation. And so again, like I said, explaining to the kids is one thing, but also explaining to the parents and showing them that code of conduct and showing them the different min and max, first offense, second offense, things like that. So, yeah.
What type of direction is given to the teachers, particularly in middle schools? Because I know when my daughter was in middle school, she was talking a lot about observing vaping and even drinking that was going on in class. And so my question was always, doesn't the teacher know? Isn't the teacher noticing this? So what type of guidance is given to the teachers in terms of observing behavior that's off, because maybe they're under the influence of something, or something that just seems suspicious that they might be doing in the classroom?
Yep. Great question. We talk with our staff, especially at the beginning of school, but through our professional developments and through our staff meetings, your spidey sense is number one. If something does seem a little off, we encourage all of our staff to either shoot us a text, just give us a quick call, and just say, hey, they can do it discreetly, and then we'll handle it. If it's something blatant, like a student is intoxicated, or they see the vape cartridge in the pants as they ask to go to the bathroom, then we'll handle it. So we just always let them know, see something, say something, and then we've got you. Like, do what you do best, and that's teach. Everything else, we got your back. And so we just keep telling them, if you think something's up, let us know. Because if it's not, great, that's okay. Like, we at least went into the investigation, I guess, or we proved it incorrect or correct. So. Yeah, it's level of comfort. And that goes for dress code too. You know, we only have 2 eyes. And so when you dress code a student, they're like, but it's 5th period. I've gotten through the whole day. And I'm like, because I didn't see you. Like, I'm sorry. You know, so it's, yes, focus on instruction. We've got your back.
Do you want me to talk about high school vaping? That's Oh, did it become more common? I have not. I worked at Desert Mountain for 3 years, and this is my 2nd year at Chaparral. I do not think that vaping has become more common. It's been pretty consistent. I will say that we have some great resources. We have a great partnership with Not My Kid. And what that organization does is they support us if a student is caught for vaping or if we think they're vaping. So if parents are like, hey, I think my kid's vaping, or they're hanging around these kids that are vaping, we can refer them to Not My Kid and they can take a prevention class for free. And I've recommended that many times to parents, is take them so they can learn to turn it down, to say no. The one thing that we go into the classrooms at the beginning of the year in high school, each grade level goes in, I go into all the English classes and I talk to the students. We have cameras everywhere at high school. And it is so obvious if you're vaping, you are going to get caught if you vape in high school. And they want to outsmart that, but we again remind them that you are going in a big group and there's smoke coming out. Hello. And then the other thing that really helps in high school that we do is negative group affiliation, which is in the code of conduct. So we tell the students, if you are standing in the bathroom next to someone that's vaping, you are also part of the problem. Get out of there and you need to go tell adult. That is a struggle for us, is because it's peer pressure, and the students start to get into a crowd of kids and they want to be friends, and then the friend starts vaping and then they feel like they have to do it too. So educating the students on the positive choices and the consequences that come with the choice to vape is another thing that I see, is like signs on the door. Like, if you vape in this bathroom, it's an automatic 5-day suspension. So those things do help, and I will say that the best way, though, is the education piece. So our SRO on campus will talk to students. We have guest speakers that come in. Our social worker will do drug prevention. And again, the Not My Kid partnership is really incredible that we have that.
Okay, so the next topic is devices. My question is about a code of conduct violation, but do you want to answer the one about Away for the Day? So which schools in SUSD are participating in Away for the Day, and what is it?
It's K-8 in terms of gate to gate, if you will, of turning off the phones, putting them in the backpack, and not taking them out during passing, during lunch. So that is K-8, Away for the Day. The middle schools last year, many middle schools had been doing this the last few years, and last year as a middle school team really wanted to be unified on what that looks like, and so really have been lockstep in Away for the Day. The high schools, the expectation is your device is away unless there's authorized use by a teacher, and so there are some, like I think Amy said this earlier about a student who will not listen, taking out the AirPods, taking out or putting away the phone, then that becomes a defiance issue. But so for the high schools, it's more discretionary that the administrators or the teachers can and will allow students to utilize their phones for academics. But you can probably talk more practically on what you see.
So we do Away for the Day in high school, and it is during class time. So we have phone pockets that the students, when they come in, they stick the phone in the pocket, and they aren't allowed to take it out of the pocket until the instruction is done, the class is done. But they do have them in the hallways, and they are allowed to have them at lunch. That's it. The pockets are in every classroom.
So is that just Chaparral? Because that's not Arcadia. Is that, but that is at Chaparral? Okay.
Yeah, my question is really just about like the concept of Away for a Day is really to try to prevent kid usage, but is there like discussion of a ban for cell phone use, like K through 8 instead of just an Away for the Day, like an actual ban that's implemented with respect to cell phone usage in K through 8? Like what is the disciplinary action for a sixth grader who's playing with their phone? From away from
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak at my campus, but I have to tell you, if it wasn't for the support of our parents and of our staff and of our students, I mean, you walk through our cafeteria and kids are like having conversations and laughing and joking and being silly and just being kids, which is amazing that rollout of Away for the Day gate to gate is so successful. But it really comes down to, one, our teachers, two, our parents, because those conversations at home that they're having with their kid, don't bring it, don't put it in your pocket, leave it in your backpack. And then it's also our students. I mean, it's amazing. So it's really working K-8. And that's what I can speak on. Now, for infractions, we do sort of like a 3-strike rule. And that letter is included in the first week packet home, and it's signed by the student and the parent. And first infraction is we take it and we call home. We let the parent know, hey, strike 1, your child can pick it up at the front office at the end of the day. Second infraction, we confiscate it, bring it up to the front office, call the parent, and let them know that you'll have to come pick it up, and it doesn't have to be today. And some parents are like, oh, it's Friday. I'll be there Monday. And they're like, they don't need it for the weekend. And then third, it's going to be the same as the second, except after that, they lose it. They lose the privilege to have it on them, like in their backpack, for the semester. Because again, it's middle school. This is the time where we're teaching them and they're learning from their mistakes. So to take it away for an entire year, a little harsh when you're 12, but they'll have that second opportunity. Hopefully they've learned and they won't, make that decision again second semester. So it's working really well. And as I've talked with my colleagues, their campuses, it's working pretty well too. But it's only as strong as the staff and the parents. And like I've told our PTO so many times, thank you, thank you, thank you. The first day of school, I maybe saw 2 phones walking up. Like it was awesome. So, sorry.
That's a really, really good point. And I will share that in the past, they've had their phones all day. And so we talked and thought, gosh, if we go hard with them and say, absolutely not the whole day, like what a teenager, they'll rebel. So we wanted to ease into this and maybe look at putting some more of that in place and looking at some activities that maybe we can provide at lunch as, hey, like, you guys want to put your phones here? We can charge them at lunch while you guys can do cornhole or pickleball or something. So we want to kind of ease into that.
So they're also using it for what does the student conduct say about cheating using mobile devices like personal laptops or cell phones? How is this handled in schools?
That's handled under academic dishonesty. So regardless of the tool you use to cheat, it's handled under academic, because I can use a paper and pencil and slip something under, you know, they can use another device like a cell phone, like you said, calculator, but the violation is the behavior of cheating, not necessarily the device. We're not going to take away a pencil, not going to, you know, necessarily take away a phone unless it's there's a reason to. Want to speak from the site level?
Yes, we've had some really great responses from teachers that we didn't, we imagine that they might not like it. But we do allow the teachers autonomy to say, hey, we're going to I'm giving you permission to take your phones out right now. You're going to use it to support something we're learning. So yes, that does occur so that they can have some autonomy with it.
And middle level is a little different. As a staff, we've agreed we're not going to do it because it takes away the credibility of the initiative and it pins each other against each other. And so as tempting as that is, because it's so easy, right? But we do provide laptops, and so everyone has access. And we've seen a drastic downturn in the social media drama. Yeah, I can't say it.
I'm hearing a lot of like parents afraid of devices in schools, but like someone said, it's really great use for it. Take a picture of the board, and I would hate for my kids not to have that option. What is the science saying about devices in educational environments? What is the educational best practice? Not what we have at Scottsdale. What is you're hearing from the field?
I mean, I think it's a great tool. Our youth, the students who are in our schools right now, that's what they're used to. That's how they do learn. That's what they are able to access. But it's also what you do as the instructor with the technology. So you can get halfway there, but then you can finish what they've looked at with that roundtable discussion, with that in-depth sort of, formal or informal assessment. But I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so.
How do you get past parental fear of devices? Because there's a lot of that I hear, not just in this room, but like a lot of parent angst about devices, but they're so powerful. Like I couldn't imagine going a whole day without my phone, be able to take a picture of something as I'm leaving this meeting, in fact.
Right, as I have two laying out here in front of me.
I just happen to know about a local JD, PhD psychologist, Lisa Stroman. She does presentations all over. And her approach is to teach the kids appropriate use. Phones aren't going away. Pictures aren't, cameras aren't going away. But I'd look her up. It's Digital Citizen Academy is what she does. Yeah, she does great presentations.
Technology, the good use of it, and how addictive it is, as we all know. It's awesome.
But is it
I've gone a full hour without pulling my phone out.
So no, it's not all fear-mongering. There are people who are studying phones and how effective they are in schools, and I can connect you with some studies. It's something I've come across in my other job that is not this. So yes, the answer is no, it's not fear-mongering, and yes, it is being studied. Okay, so our last topic that we have for the panel is on restorative justice. The question is, does SUSD have restorative well, it should be what is restorative justice? Does SUSD have restorative justice programs? Are they at every school? And what is, the schools that have them, what is site administration's role?
Yes, as a site administrator, I use restorative justice all the time. In fact, every day. Anytime I see a student, I will ask, like, what happened? What were you thinking? Those are all restorative questions that don't put students on the defense, that don't make them feel shame, that they can talk through what happened. I will say I've dealt with some pretty high boyfriend-girlfriend drama with restorative justice, and it works. But the key, and I will share this, is both of the parties have to agree to talk. If one person says, no way, I do not want to talk to Susie, it won't work. But if you can get the parents and the students agree to sit down and talk through, and there's a process for it. Our social workers are trained, and a lot of times will bring the social worker, the students that agreed, the parents are allowed to attend. We have an administrator, and we will talk through it. It works really well. It helps to squash issues. It's a non-punitive measure that works really well, and I can't say enough good things about the opportunity to use that as much as possible.
I mean, I pretty much mimic what Amy was stating. You know, it's always an option, and it's always something that we want to explore and utilize, and the kids really do adhere to it. And as we witness the conflict resolves or the conflict lessens, and then we follow up and we work one-on-one with those kids. And so it can range from social work interaction, counseling, SRO. It just depends on the severity of what we're dealing with.
And the only other thing I would add is the Scottsdale Police Department has a restorative justice program as well that allows for the vast majority of first offense misdemeanors that a student can qualify for. So if I'm caught vandalizing a school, and this is for the city of Scottsdale, but to put it into a school context, if we have a student that has vandalized the school, and as a school district, we say, yes, we want them to, rather than being cited and having to go through the system, we agree to have them do another program. So they may participate in the city of Scottsdale on a weekend program where they're doing cleanup. You know, they're giving back to the community. The idea is to make right what was wrong. And so the same way with the Scottsdale Police Department, the victim of the crime has to agree, and so do the parents. And they've had what they do is they track recidivism of repeated behaviors, repeated misdemeanors, and they've had a really good response rate of, in the 90% of students do not repeat the behavior when they go through and complete the entire program, which does include parent participation as well.
And then at the elementary level, when you're thinking about restorative, you're really thinking about those restorative practices. So how are we restoring the relationships between either two students or a student going back into a classroom, right? If you think about the levels of angst that a student might feel when they've been removed from the classroom for whatever behavior that they've had. They might feel embarrassed. They might feel scared to go back into that classroom because they don't know what their friends are going to think. So some of these practices are just about making kids feel comfortable going back into a classroom after something has occurred, restoring that relationship or that community feeling within the classroom.
So last March, the SPC meeting was SROs, and they talked about the restorative justice program, and it is on YouTube if you want to watch that. Okay, we have time for just one more question, and then I'll have to do the rest of our agenda.
So when you talk about the restorative practices, that goes back to a question I had earlier today. What kind of help do the teachers get from district leadership to actually deal with all the different things that are happening in the classroom? be it, like the dress code, be it behavior stuff, be it somebody who's vaping, what kind of help do they get?
The question was, what kind of help do our teachers get to deal with some of these behaviors? And in the beginning of the year, before school starts, we talk about the MTSS levels of support that students need. And the tier 1 level of MTSS, which is most commonly in our classrooms, is clearly defined expectations. And that's what we work on at the beginning of the year. Is we have a matrix at Chaparral that goes over, here's the expectations, here's what it should look like in the classroom, and the teachers have that tool to refer to, and then they have a clear path for what happens if it's not looking like this. And it's a 2-page document. We kept it very simple of, here's what it should look like, and here's what happens, or here's what you do, or here's who to call if you're not seeing this or if you're struggling with a student.
So do they get training in restorative practices, in community circles, things like
Do the teachers receive training? No, not necessarily. Yeah, Adrian, yes.
Well, I was gonna say, our job is to teach. So, like, I'm a math teacher, so I'm not gonna have a restorative practice moment in my math class, right? But if I see two kids ready to squabble, I'm gonna contact my assistant principal and say, hey, we've got drama brewing in second hour, watch these two students. And there's probably something that's already happened, and they're gonna pull them out. Probably the social worker or one of the counselors that has a good relationship with those kids. And they're gonna have that moment possibly during the school day, because we'd rather have them miss math class or English class and deal with it now than have it explode after school into a fight or something else.
Yeah, I get that. But I worked in an elementary school, and I did some training on restorative practices, and it was amazing. If you know how to have a community circle and you have these problems in the class, and that was in a setting with lots of behavior problems, and the administrative staff couldn't really deal with all the behavior problems in that school. So the teachers didn't need to know how to handle that themselves. And it was amazing to see first of all, the kind of confidence that I gained, and then what I could really see in the class, in the whole group, what that actually did to the whole group. And that is amazing, because after a while, that kind of trouble falls away. And you get a community there that is really helping each other.
It's a great perspective. And I do know, like at Desert Mountain a couple years ago, we had a menu of choices that teachers could choose. And if they wanted to get trained in something like that, they could choose to do that. But for the most part, if they like to focus on their content and what they're teaching, and we don't put pressure on them to have to do something like that, but it is available if they want to seek out that training.
And we definitely provide tools for ongoing district professional development, letting them know and giving them the tier 1 interventions, the tier 2, the tier 3 MTSS. We've got the PBIS programs on campus. So we are giving that information, and then just depending on whether it's a site-led PD versus a district-led, the content can vary.
And I think Brooke wanted to comment on elementary.
Yeah, so at the elementary level, some of those like restorative circles happen more frequently. Are all elementary teachers trained in it? No, they are not. But I also think that when you're an elementary school teacher, oftentimes your training in your educational system was a little bit different. You know you're creating that community circle just by having circle time in kindergarten and in first grade, right? And you're having those conversations with kids when you're having centers. So it does lend itself a little bit more naturally in an elementary level, but it's an opportunity for learning for teachers. Just more tools in their toolbox to help support kids in general is always a good thing.
Okay, so we have a few more things to cover on the agenda, but I wanted to thank all of you so much for coming tonight and answering all of the questions that were lobbed at you and sharing the microphone. You did a great job passing in. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few executive board updates. We have our budget update. We received a $500 grant, and then we had another month of email expense. Those are the only changes from last month. Our next general meeting will be right here in this room, Wednesday, November 15th. It'll be in the morning at 9 o'clock. And the topic, we think we know what it is. We're going to get it nailed down, but it'll be great and wonderful, and you should all come. We have another PTO roundtable coming up at the beginning of the month. It'll also be in this room. I think the first is a Wednesday as well. It's 6:30 at night, so a slightly different time. Doors will open at 6:15 p.m., and it'll be spectacular. The first one was amazing, and Laura and Lara are here, and they will be there as well at that one. Do you guys want to add anything? You don't want to add anything? Oh yeah, Dennis Roller will be there. Bylaws, right? Okay, so talking about bylaws, parent engagement, and facilities. All PTO board members and any other members are welcome. It's a good time. You should come. Okay, so we've had a request to help publicize this. Oh, so I didn't put the link on this slide. Okay, so the link is really tough, but I'm going to tell you how to find it. So SUSD has approved the hiring of 5 security guards that are full-time with benefits. And so to find this job posting, I'll send this out in email. I'll put it on our social media. But go to susd.org/careers. There's a big blue button that says click here to view our job openings. That takes you to the HR website, which is, again, not a URL that rolls off the tongue easy. And then if you search for security officer, you will find these postings. So 3 simple steps. susd.org/careers. Click on the big button that says view our job openings, and then type security officer, and you will find it. Specifically for elementary.
So of the 5 complexes, one would cover each complex, which we currently don't. So we're hiring. Which ones are those that don't have a security officer? No elementary, sorry, there is absolutely no elementary school that has security guards. They do have all SROs and security guards at high schools. They have SROs designated at middle schools. The K through 8 schools do not have a designated SRO. Josh is here. Some do, but they're shared. And the elementary campuses do not have any security guards, nor do they have SROs. So we're trying to encourage that every single elementary school has some sort of representation. There's quite a large district, a lot of elementary school campuses, and there's a lot of risk, to that. So we want to make sure that each campus has designated support with a security guard to be an extension of Josh's team here. So they've been approved. We've got to get them hired, and if there's, anybody in the parent community or within the elementary school districts that's able to communicate to, to get the positions filled, that'd be great.
So again, I'll send out the the thing you can click on that takes you straight there. I'll send that out on email, and we'll also put this out on SPC's social media channels. Okay, so the final thing that we'll have this meeting, we have no committee updates. The final thing we'll have this meeting are rep announcements, and I know I have a few, and you should speak into the microphone. Did she leave? Okay.
I know she's the rep for CocoPa, and she wanted to let other reps know basically what her school is doing with Coronado and helping the community specialist. There were some other announcements, but I can include them in the takeaways. But I personally just wanted to say thank you to all the SPC reps for giving your time and coming here. It means so much, and I really hope you can, if you want more from this, it is up to you guys. We need your feedback and to say what we can do to help you really get the most out of it and be able to communicate with your community effectively.
So that's probably going to be a future general meeting, and it's the ball is rolling. Is that a good answer? Did Laura still here? Oh, Lena's here. Yeah, December. It's probably going to be the meeting in December. Yeah. Okay, any other announcements or questions? No? Okay, thank you so much for coming. If you ever have any question, that email address I'll either answer it or send you to whoever can answer it for you. Thanks so much.